Smiling faces, the family way. Margaret, Lou, and quilting will make your day.
The first thing that I want to go over with you is laying out the outside of our bag, our duffel bag, and marking it. I marked my duffel bag with my chalk marker. This is one that's got a nice little wheel on it, and it marks up quite easily. I'll put a link to one below in the description box so that you can get one for yourself. What I suggest you do is take your 6.5 by 24.5 inch ruler. I use a Creative Grids one. They're my favorite because I can easily see through them and work with the numbers. The other thing that I like about it is all the half numbers are in black, all the whole numbers are in white. So when I take a look at something and I need a half number, I know I can easily do it on the black side. If I know I need a whole number, I can go from the white side. So the first thing I did was take it, and I used the side, and I'm gonna move this down a little so you can see it. Whoa! I used this edge in order to do these two markings, so I simply took my ruler, lined it up to the edge of my piece, and marked it. Okay, so I did that with these two marks, these two marks, and then there's a mark at the top and the bottom. They also asked that I put a safety pin in one edge. I did that. Now the last part, which is a little bit more difficult to be able to mark, are these lines right here in the center. What I suggest you do is from one end, take your ruler and measure down. What I did was I would put a little mark, move my ruler, put a little mark, move my ruler, put a little mark. Then I turned the ruler this way and just drew the line. Makes it much easier to handle. Now when I got to the back side of my duffel bag, what I found was that, or the lining side, I couldn't mark on this side with the white chalk. Just wasn't gonna show. Just nothing I could do about it. So what I did instead, you can see right here, I have a friction, I used my purple friction pen and just marked down. Because it's on the inside, if it doesn't go away or if it comes back, nobody's gonna see it but me. So I wanted to let you know on that. So the next thing that we're gonna work on is our coordinating fabric, and we need to make our zipper pulls. How I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna take this piece of fabric that is for the zipper pulls, and I'm going to spray it with my Best Press, my Mary Ellen's Best Press. So once I've sprayed it with the Best Press, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to feed it right in there. The next thing I'm also gonna grab a basic straight pin. So what I'm gonna do is just take it and roll it just a little bit, enough to get it started through there. Then you can see there's a little slot right there, and I can just take my straight pin and just push it on through. And then there is my edge. Hopefully you can see that. So now, once I've done that, I'm gonna take my iron and I'm going to set my iron right here, and I'm just gonna slowly work it down, and that will make my tape. Now what this tape is going to look like, I'll show you this way, is it's going to be folded approximately like this when you get it off. So you're just going to roll it one more time, roll it, and then you're going to just top stitch right down that. And this is what it looks like when it's all done. There's my piece. I've gone ahead and I have stitched it. The directions told you what length to cut it into. I'm gonna wait to the end to cut it. I'm not cutting mine right now, but if you wanna cut yours right now, you go right ahead, that's just fine. So that's how we do the very first step, which is making our zipper pulls. The next thing that we're going to do is move on to our padded shoulder pad, which is this piece. But before we do that, I do want to caution you on something. On the directions, Annie suggests that you baste 1/8 of an inch around all of your quilted pieces. I will tell you, do that. It's something that really helps keep it together and put it together. So I am going to suggest that you do that. I want you to round the shoulder pads according to your directions. Now, if you look at my shoulder pad, I've got a nice flower here, just a part of a flower there, and I've got a little bit more of a flower here. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna use this as one side of it, and this side, which doesn't have so many flowers on it, I'm gonna cover that up with this piece. Now what this is this is the piece that allows your shoulder strap to go through here. So I wanted to point that out to you. The next thing that I need to do is get together my bias binding. Now in Annie's directions, she's got fantastic instructions on how to make bias binding. I do want you to follow her instructions. One of the things that she did on this piece that she's never done before in any of the bags of hers I've made is she does instruct you to cut 2 different sizes of your bias binding. We have a 2 1/4 piece, and then we have some 2 1/2 inch pieces. Here's my 2 1/2. You see they're just a little bit bigger. So I do want you to pay attention to that when you go about cutting it. So I'm going to step back and I'm going to read the directions on what I need to do on this, and then I'll be right back and show you what we're going to do. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to work with what's known as our stabilizer sleeve. All right. This is our stabilizer sleeve, and what this actually is going to do is it's going to fit the base, the travel base, to our duffel bag. And here's our travel base that will sit in here. It's really nice, and it's got, I believe it's 1/8 of an inch thick, and I think it's going to do a fantastic job of stabilizing it. So I'm going to set this aside and come back to the directions. What we need to do first is we need to pick one of these 2 ends. I'll turn it so that you can better see it. Need to pick one of these 2 ends. We need to fold it over 1/4 of an inch and then fold it over again 1/4 of an inch and top stitch it down. I wanted to show you one of the little things that I do to make it a little bit easier. I use this clover fusible web. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just lay a piece down on here, measuring it out, which now I've done. I'm going to just rip it off with my fingernail. I'm going to take this over to the pressing table and I'm going to press this down. Then I'm going to peel the paper off of this side because this has got a nice sticky side to it. And I'll be able to roll it again. Then I'll just have to put it through the sewing machine, top stitching it. Just a nice way to keep it all together while you're working on it, and it stops you from having to measure constantly that 1/4 of an inch, because that's what this piece is. It's 1/4 of an inch wide. So I'll be back once I have attached this and top stitched it down so that we will be on to the next part of our directions. Now that I've gotten that sewn, and this is what it looks like, it's all nice and stitched down, I am going to now put right sides together, just like this. I'm going to stitch down the length of it first. Then I'm going to take it over to my pressing table, and I am going to line the seam up so that it is in the center of the piece. Okay. Just like this, so it's in the center. I'm going to press that seam open, and then I will stitch close this bottom part. And then I will turn it right side out and give it one more press. Then I'll be back to show it to you. All right, so I'm going to now take my base. I want you to see I've sewn it all. I pressed open my seams. I did clip my corners down here when I flipped it right side out. I'm just going to take my base, the base, and just slide this right in there. Then after I've slidden it in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick it up and I'm just going to tuck. You can see what I'm doing, I think. I'm just going to tuck the end of the pocket inside, and I'm gonna have to lift this up. I'm sorry, because I know I'm out of camera focus, but I'm gonna lift it up and see what I did. I just tucked it inside of itself. Then I can lay that back down, and there's my very nice base. This is all done. I'm gonna leave that in there, and the next thing we're going to do is work on our carrying strap. Now, one of the things that Annie tells us to do is to machine stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from all of the edges of our quilted pieces. I did that before I started doing anything. The other thing she did ask us to do is to round the corner. There is a Creative Grids ruler that has a 2.5 inch curve so that you can do that. I just use a big spool from my King Tut thread. This is the Superior's King Tut, and I just lay that on the edge, draw a line, and then cut it away. So that's how I do that. But now it's time to get working on this strap. So I'm going to read the directions and then come back and tell you what it is we have to do. According to our directions, we're going to take our carrying strap pad binding. And that's these little pieces right here. All right, I'm going to take my binding pieces over to my pressing table, and I'm just going to spray them with some Best Press, and then I will bring them back and show you what we're going to do with them. I want to show you before I get to the next piece, and then you won't be able to see it because it'll be all covered up. So what I did was I took it, I folded it in half. It's not been pressed yet. Just, it only had the first pressing. I didn't press it in half. I sewed it down on the wrong side of the fabric. Then I took it and I flipped it around and I just top stitched it down. And I think it gives it a really nice finished look. So I'll do it on this one and then I'll be back. All right, here's my piece. Here is my binding. So what I'm going to do is the same thing that I did on the other one. I'm going to take my binding. I'm going to start here on the side. I'm going to take my binding all the way around. I'm going to attach it, and then I'm going to flip it around, and I am going to top stitch it down. So I'll be back once that's done. All right, I've got my basket of Wonder Clips, and I want you to see, this is my piece. I've stitched it down. Oh, I got threads hanging again. I think that's the story of my life. But anyhow, I've got it stitched down on this side. So now all I'm going to do is roll it over, which you can see I've done it. Now if I need to clip it, I don't have a problem doing that. I just will come in and lift away my seam, you know, the little bit extra, and just come in here and clip around the corners. If that makes it easier for me to roll the binding around it and have the binding even, there's no harm in doing that at all. I just go in and clip it a little bit if I need to. So then I'll take my Wonder Clips and actually clip this right down so that it makes it easier when I go to top stitch this. When I top stitch it, I'm going to do just like I did here. Just going to pull this around. And because we've got this sewn on the bias, it's going to roll right over very nicely. And it will be right there where we need it. So I'm just going to keep going around with my clips. I do use a lot of clips on things like this, but that's okay. I need to clip this corner too. I'm not going to clip from this side. I'm going to turn it over so that I can pull back my binding just a little bit and actually see what it is that I'm clipping, because I don't want to clip my binding by any means, shape, or form. And I'm going to clip this side a little bit. And yes, I've made a little bit of a mess, but that happens. And I'm just going to pull it around. You do have to be careful when doing this because you can very easily stretch the binding, especially when you're sewing it down on the other side first. So I usually, when I cut my binding to wrap it around, I tend to cut it a little bit shorter so that it fits a little snugly, because I think when it fits a little bit snugly, it's easier to manipulate. Just it is for me. May not be for you, but it is for me. So here I go. I'm gonna go right around this corner. See how I do here, keeping it lined up. I think I'm doing pretty good. Almost there. So now I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and I'm just going to sew it right down. Then once we get done with this piece, the next piece that we have to do, we have to work on is our handle, our carrying strap, and our carrying strap tabs. So there's that. And I'm going to get this sewn down and then I'm going to pull out these pieces and see what it is that we've got to do to make this go together. All right, here is my carrying strap all done. It's top stitched down and I think we're doing good. Time to move on to the next step. The next thing that we're going to do is make the handles. Now the handle is made up of multiple pieces of the fabric and you actually have to stitch a couple together. In the pattern it tells you to top stitch over the seam. This is one of the seams, into top stitch. She says use matching color thread. I'm using gray all over this bag and I'm just fine with the fact that I can see my thread. The next thing that I have to do is, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put right sides together and we're gonna stitch all the way down this. And this is quite long. It's over 100 inches. So we're gonna fold right sides together. But before I do that, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take, this is just a strip of fabric that I have that sits in the drawer. It's quite long. I'm gonna attach it right here, more towards, as close to the center as I can get it. I'm just gonna top stitch it down in the selvage. You can see right there in the selvage. And then I will go about it. The reason for that is because then I can grab this to turn it right side out. So I'm gonna get that done, then I'll come back. So what I did first was I went ahead and sewed the length of it. Then once I got the length sewed of it, I pressed the seams open as best I could. It wasn't the easiest thing to do because I don't have a real tiny iron and I didn't want to crease the sides of it. So it was a little bit difficult, but I got through it. I took a safety pin and just attached it to one end of the strapping and just fed it through. Then once I got it all fed through, I followed her directions and I top stitched an 1/8 on both sides and closed off the end. But then I wanted to add a little bit to it. So I did go ahead and stitch 1/4 of an inch over, and I really like the way that looks. I didn't really like all of the fabric moving so easily through here, and now with those 2 additional things of top stitch, it doesn't. Then once I did that, I just fed it through my shoulder pad on the carrying bag, and that was it. It was very, very easy to do. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end while we make our travel duffel bag. Next week, what we're going to be working on is our carry strap, and we're also going to be learning how to attach some of our hardware. This is just 2 pieces of it. There's a few more that we've got that we will also be attaching, and we just will keep going until we get our duffel bag done. I'm really excited about this bag, and I cannot wait to take it on my very first trip, which I'll be doing in April. So come on back next week, and we will keep going on this travel duffel. Thanks so much. Don't forget, if you're not part of our Facebook group, we would love for you to join. And don't forget to sign up for my newsletter so that you get notifications of our next upcoming projects. Thanks so much, and I'll see you again really soon. Bye.
Smiling faces, the family way. Margaret, Lou, and quilting will make your day.